What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the Off the Bench Podcast Network. Welcome into another edition here of the Change Up here on the Podcast Network. It is my pleasure to introduce, of course, my co-host Bryanna Winner. You can find her on Twitter at bwinner12. Bryanna, how you doing today?
I'm tired, but I'm doing good.
Yeah. We actually got just some late news rolling in here, really, in the last 5-10 minutes. Unfortunate news that will start the show off with Don Sutton. Just in the last couple hours, I would assume, just hit the wires. He has passed away at 75 years old. A longtime pitcher. For the Dodgers, as mainly what I see or what I would see in the highlights. Never saw him pitch live. My recollection of him was, of course, on the TBS broadcast, being a part of the Braves when I was younger. Really, the only way you could watch out of town baseball was TBS or WGN with the Braves and Cubs. He unfortunately passed away. Obviously, I think we all expected 2021 to be rough, but it continues as well. Bryanna, thoughts on Don Sutton? You're probably unfamiliar yourself, but I'm sure you've seen, heard maybe something on there.
Yeah, I mean, I also just looked up every single stat that he had as I had just learned this. I mean, obviously, he's in two different Hall of Fames, like the Braves as well as baseball. Dodgers retired his number, and and then he was a four-time All-Star.
Yeah.
As a pitcher, but he did play for other teams, but obviously not as prominent as the 15 years he did with the Dodgers. He was 324 and 256 in his career with an earned run average of 326. And this is a lot. The strikeouts were 3,574.
Yeah. He was one of the early big time strikeout pitchers. I know it was Nolan Ryan who was the one who was breaking a lot of his when Nolan Ryan was working his way up. Don Sutton was up there towards the top, and obviously the strikeout is a different weapon now. It's definitely, most pitchers have it, and it comes at a higher rate, but at the same time, you will look at, what was it, 326 and 254. I don't know if you'll see a whole lot of pitchers who will have 326 decisions in their career because they don't normally go 5 or 6 innings. Obviously, in Don Sutton's day, it was a little more, you're going 7 innings pretty much regardless. Tough one there. Obviously, the Braves, that's another, I guess, I know he was more in terms of playing days with the Dodgers, but obviously Braves fans will remember hearing him for pretty much, the late 90s, 2000s, not quite sure when he finished up in the.
Yeah, and I mean, he started his career with the Dodgers. He made sure he ended his career with the Dodgers. So he had 4 different teams in the middle, but obviously he earned the MLB ERA leader in his first stint with the Dodgers, and then he played 1 season at the very end of his career and just ended there. Yeah. So I think just like Lasorda, he's a Dodger at heart.
Yep. Yeah, and it's
always will be.
There's a lot of blue up there, and that's another pitcher they can throw into that the cornfield. That's a rotation guy, definitely top of the charts there. But moving on to a couple news and notes, we got actually a good amount as the signings and trades finally kind of start rolling in. Is once again, we're expecting, we talked about it last week, Rob Manfred said to the teams to expect a regular season or a regular season. And if that's the case, then we are going to be looking at maybe a month, 5 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. So the trades and signings starting to roll in. We'll start with, I think the biggest one of the week was, of course, DJ LeMahieu not going anywhere, essentially. That part of the deal, or that part of the free agency, he will stay with the Yankees. Bryanna, thoughts on DJ LeMahieu staying in pinstripes?
I mean, it's money. Yep. Like, what can I say? He used to be a Rocky, now he's a Yankee. He's been a Yankee for the last few years. I believe he went for the money.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted to win. And the Yankees did just that, and he decided, hey, I'm going to just stay for another 6 years. I'm getting $90 million. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also a situation, that every year the Yankees don't rebuild. There are some teams where, we look at the Red Sox. The Red Sox have had to rebuild for the last couple years. And maybe they could have gone out and gone crazy, but the Yankees don't do that. They will continue to build in the offseason and things like that. And this is just another situation where they didn't let DJ get away. I will say I don't know if they got, maybe lucky is not the right word. Maybe fortunate is in terms of the Mets going out and getting Lindor, because the Mets were apparently their biggest competition, the Yankees' biggest competition for LeMahieu. So,
well, he wanted to stay in New York.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a huge market. Obviously, the Yankees and Mets, if we're comparing success, there is a big gap, but it is still New York, that market, and obviously, look, the Mets now have kind of, and believe me, we'll get to the Mets here in a bit. They have some of their own drama, but in terms of the change of ownership, there's, brighter skies coming out ahead for the Mets. But for DJ LeMahieu to stay with the Yankees, I think this is a very team-friendly deal as well. 6 years, $90 million for a guy who has been one of the few guys who's left Coors Field and actually hit better. So he also stays in Yankee Stadium, which is also a hitter's paradise as well. You don't have the elevation, but the short outfield, the short porches, either way will make things easier for him. And hopefully we'll see a full season, and we'll see what he can fully do if he can replicate what he's done the last couple years.
I think the main thing for the Yankees, though, is staying healthy. Because obviously that was a major issue this last year, and it wasn't even COVID. No. It was just everybody was just getting injured.
Yeah. Well, and that's
including LeMahieu.
Like, exactly. Well, and it's funny. He actually, compared to everybody else who got hurt, he was like, it was like, oh, he actually still was able to play 35, 40 games. And when you look at Judge and Stanton and was it Paxton who I think went down? And honestly, there's some,
I don't know, a lot of their players went down.
Yeah, it's almost hard to think about and remember who's on this team, because it seems like they go down all the time. And obviously Aaron Judge is at the top of that list. Garrett Cole, yeah. He's it's going to be the biggest thing. That's a great point to bring up, that the biggest obstacle for the Yankees, as always, is going to be health. Especially with those big boppers. But DJ LeMahieu will stick around for at least 6 more years. Moving on to the Mets news. We'll keep it in New York. This was news that came down last night, the 18th of January, as we record here on Tuesday. Jared Porter has, I think the easiest way to call it is harassment. It's a situation where he was sending unsolicited text messages that I'm sure were followed up with some unsolicited pictures of things.
If she leaves you unread,
yeah, well,
60 to 70 texts, yeah. Like, leave her alone.
Yeah, I mean, and it is obviously a situation where it's a problem. It is something that is illegal at the very, like I said, at the very least. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't really, but
that's
at the very least, 100% at the very least. So in this climate, it's unacceptable, and hopefully the parties involved will get this figured out, because at the end of the day, there is a victim here, and I don't want to get all eyes and everybody talking about Jared Porter and that stuff, but there is a victim here. And that's the biggest thing. He is now going to be under the microscope. He has been fired by the Mets, obviously, rightly so. The Major League Baseball has launched an investigation. All eyes point to a suspension for Jared Porter, to the point of it will be an indefinite suspension where Major League Baseball will need to essentially approve his arrival. And that is something that baseball will have to tread lightly on. But that's something, and we will add that one there, Bryanna. So what are your thoughts there? Obviously, this is maybe a little closer to home for the females out there. But Jared Porter gone after just, and I don't even want to call it mistake. Like you could sit here and say, oh, mistake. Well, maybe mistake were the first 5, 10, but 70. I mean, that's just too much.
I mean,
I've had moments of maybe frustration or hurt or, things like that. But 70, that's unbelievable.
I don't even know what to say to this.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely don't want to be in her position. But I mean, he deserved it. Like, he deserved to get fired. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more coming to him.
Oh, yeah.
But that's all I've got on that. Again, I don't have much words on this.
Yeah. We will move on to Theo Epstein. Honestly, a guy that I thought was going to be the general manager of the Mets. He moves into Major League Baseball headquarters, and he has essentially began his ascent, if you will. I kind of liken it to a roller coaster. You just got on the roller coaster and you start kind of slowly working your way up, and you're going to plateau here pretty soon. I think obviously now he is probably getting groomed. A big name like Theo Epstein, a guy with an ego like Theo Epstein, he is not going to go in there to be, second or third fiddle on the competition committee or an ambassador. No, Theo Epstein is going to do something to put his fingerprint on the game. He is moving into the front office. Thoughts on someone that brought your Cubs a World Series after a three-digit year drought? Thoughts on Theo Epstein moving to the big house, if you will?
Going off of that, considering what he did with the Cubs, I think he deserves this promotion. Honestly, just like you, I think he will become MLB's commissioner at some point in the next 10, 15 years. That depends on when Manfred decides to step down. I think every single player is waiting for that, especially Bauer, especially what happened in the season. I mean, Manfred needs to go, but I mean, he's not going to leave this soon. He's probably going to wait 10, 15 years. But I mean, like you said, Epstein's probably getting groomed to become the next commissioner, which I honestly believe. And I think he'd make a great commissioner, and then maybe Bauer right after that.
Yes.
Like we talked about last week.
You heard it here first too. I think it was it last week?
You mentioned it last week.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a little worried about the difference in age or lack thereof of Bauer and Epstein. Epstein's a somewhat younger guy, at least in that 50s. I don't know. Maybe he looks good for his age and he's in the high 50s, but I'm pretty sure he's in his 40s. Anyways, I think all baseball fans want someone better or someone not named Rob Manfred.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes with every single league.
Yeah, no,
like Goodell in the NFL. I think that goes for everybody, including Adam Silver.
Bettman makes these other the hockey commissioner makes everyone else look like Rhodes Scholars. So just be grateful it's not Gary Bettman at the top of the heap.
Yeah, well, we're gonna move back to the trade and free agency because I know there was more. Going back to New York, Corey Kluber signed 1 year, $11 million with the Yankees. This team's getting stacked. Like, come on, give us a chance.
I'm very surprised with this. Corey Kluber, obviously, I thought he was somebody for the Padres. I said, oh, low risk, high reward. 1 year, $11 million. Not only got my eyebrows rising, but I mean, perked me up. Like, wow, okay, I'm glad the Padres didn't fall in for that. They're definitely looking good. But I will say this is we don't know what we're going to see out of Corey Kluber. It's been 2 years since he's really pitched meaningful. I think last year he might have pitched in a game or two, but it's been a long road back from injury and things like that. It's tough for me to see $11 million. Now, once again, it's not my money. And of course it is the Yankees as well. I think they got a bit of a discount on, like I said, DJ LeMahieu. It's 6 years, $90 million. For a guy who's, I think, a top 5 position player, at least at second base. So this one caught me by surprise. I thought maybe the Padres could get Corey Kluber, one, or whoever was going to get him, not just the Padres, but whoever was going to get him could get him for 1 year, $2 or $3 million, maybe even a minor league deal.
He probably was never going to go for that.
Well,
Kluber probably knows his
worth. A guy
worth.
who's been out of the league for 2 years, and not been healthy, and a situation where not a whole lot of teams have money. Pretty much every team has come out and talked about how much money they're losing. Just caught me by surprise, $11 million for Corey Kluber.
But at the same time, the only people that actually know what the players are capable of are the players, especially coming back from injury. They know when they're ready. They know when they're feeling good. Like, I think this is just a case of him telling them, like, hey, I feel good. Like, and he knows his worth.
Oh, I hear you. I think he got every bit out of that. 11 million, good for him. Like I said, and I think every player will tell you he's feeling good in negotiations. I will just be interested to see if he makes 20 starts. Fantastic. I don't know if that's going to be the case.
I mean, well, and we're going to move on to the Padres again with, I know you guys, I think it was Coach Lupien that said it. Yeah, I'm going to let you talk about this one because I know
Joe Musgrove, a local kid from El Cajon, heads from Pittsburgh here to San Diego. Padres send a package, that we had first heard, a ton of prospects or, things like that. Hudson Head is essentially the highest rated prospect. The Padres retain still their top 7 prospects, all of which were in the top 150 or 100, whatever that is. They're all still in the organization. So they've now, brought in Snell, Darvish, Musgrove, and Clevenger, and without giving up a top 150 prospect. That's very impressive for the Padres. Joe Musgrove expected to move into the fourth rotation spot. It's Darvish, Snell, Lamet, Musgrove, and Paddock, and that will play at any level, probably right there with any team in the league. Now it's time to switch gears, and you need to look for back of bullpen help. The bullpen needs help for sure. There's a lot of question marks in that bullpen, something that held the Padres back, especially very early on in the year last year. It's nice. Joey Lucchesi does head to New York. I guess kind of Jared Porter's last move as a general manager. He acquires Joey Lucchesi. I think that's a good move for the Mets, who I don't think Joey Lucchesi makes that rotation. And I thought Joey Lucchesi was going to be somebody the Padres would start to figure out where he fits in maybe a bullpen role. Maybe he's going to go try and do that now with the Mets, or the Mets will try and put him in as their number 5 starter. Unknown there, but Padres get Joe Musgrove, who is the ace of the Pirates last year, and now is the number 4 on the Padres. So
I mean, to be fair,
also still a situation where now he is not
on a better team.
Pressure on him,
and he's on a better team because let's face it, the Pirates sucked last year.
Oh yeah, this is the baseball equivalent of the lottery, going from the Pirates to the Padres. That's not only it's also your hometown team as well, from El Cajon. So Musgrove has to be very happy, like you said, going from the Pirates, who he had the least amount of run support last year. He went 1-5. But got 12 runs of run support in those 8 or 9 games that he started. So I think he's a guy who can fit into most rotations. And when you have him as your number 4, I think the Padres rotation is now set. They need to build the back end of that bullpen one way or another. And unfortunately, go for it.
And to be fair, I mean, there are worse than the Pirates, but considering last year, like the Rangers, the Red Sox sucked. The Royals he definitely got to trade up. And moving on to Kirby Yates. I don't know much about this deal.
Yeah, this just came down. I don't have the numbers on it yet. We do know he's going to Toronto. A part of there's Tyler Chatwood as well. So Tyler Chatwood and Kirby Yates both go to Toronto. Kirby Yates, obviously, as a Padre fan, he was the cast off. The Angels had released him. The Padres claimed him off waivers, and Kirby Yates 2 years ago was the best closer in baseball, and was absolutely fantastic last year. I think it was a rib issue or a midsection issue. It didn't go well for him. He was out pretty much the entirety of the year. The Padres had obviously gone out and got Trevor Rosenthal, picked up some other pieces in the bullpen. So they were not in the sweepstakes for Kirby Yates, but Tyler Chatwood, Kirby Yates going to Toronto. I think the Kirby Yates is great for them. My question, where are they playing this year? I would have to imagine it's another year of Buffalo because of the US Canadian restrictions in terms of crossing over. We've already seen in the NHL, the North Division is essentially Canada. The Canadian teams are playing in their own division, their own massive bubble, their country bubble, if you will. So there's no hopping across the border. I would assume Buffalo would be the place of choice, at least early on. But Kirby Yates and Tyler Chatwood, two different pitchers. Obviously, you're going to see, I think, Kirby Yates later on, and Tyler Chatwood you would hope to see as a starter. But we'll see for the Blue Jays. I think for them, their biggest thing is getting their young kids to swing the bat consistently. But these are positives. There's nothing wrong with these moves.
No, and I mean, speaking of somebody that has watched Chatwood play, because he is a former Cub. Yes, he signed 1 year with the Blue Jays. To be fair, the Cubs did not do well last year, but him and the other former Cub we're going to be talking about did not do that well last year. I mean, Chatwood did better than the other one, let's just say that. But, I mean, their pitching sucked last year. And going off of the Cubs, John Lester signed 1 year with the Nationals. All I'm going to say is I'm glad he's not a Cub.
Yeah.
That's all I got. He sucked. I'm glad.
The decline of John Lester has been thoroughly, I guess, documented, if you will. The Nationals, I guess you can hide him in that rotation. You have obviously Strasburg and Scherzer. There's a young kid who pitched, then his name escapes me, that moved up into the rotation. If he's your 4 or 5, that's great. I wouldn't want him anywhere near my young pitchers. I don't think he's
I want him anywhere near the starting lineup. Like,
well, I think as a 4 or a 5, I think he's a warm body. I mean, obviously there are better options out there, but I mean,
if they can transition him into a bullpen pitcher, I think he'd do a lot better. He's like, he can't go the long game. Like, he cannot go the long game anymore. He needs to come out of the bullpen and just pitch maybe like an inning. Like, he did not do well as a starter at all last year. So, I mean, that's just my thought on it. The Nationals are kind of getting every single Cub that the Cubs are not wanting back anymore because they have Schwarber now. I mean, the Cubs are in rebuild mode, and we all know it, considering they got rid of Darvish, Caratini. They didn't ask for Schwarber back. They didn't ask for Almora Jr. back. The Cubs are going to lose everybody from that core team within the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Bryant and Baez avoided arbitration, so.
Yeah, that makes their just contract maybe. I don't think Baez is going anywhere. I think Baez is the only guy that sticks around that the Cubs decide to build.
Well, Rizzo.
Back to Lester.
I think Rizzo's going to stay
too, possibly. But back to Lester. I just think, look, the Nationals will feel okay him as the 4 or 5. I don't know if a bullpen is somewhere that he'll be okay in. That's a guy who I don't think will be able to take that demotion. I think he'll probably ask for his release before that happens. But for the Nationals, this is somebody that if he can go out and give them 100 innings, I think they'll be okay with that. They're also in a division that's just an absolute buzzsaw right now, especially with what the Mets are doing. A couple other ones we had was Pedro Baez going to the Astros. Obviously not going to
2 year.
2 years.
But I don't know how much. I don't think I saw that yet.
And the Astros, this is just building up that bullpen. Obviously, one of the biggest problems in the regular season for the Astros was that bullpen. They had tried a bunch of fixes. That was a lot of problems for a lot of teams, but Baez going from the Dodgers to the Astros, this is a good situation, I think, for both player and team.
I mean, the Dodgers are just getting pitchers after pitchers, and it's just there's no room for him on that roster, on that lineup anymore, and he realizes it. Obviously, the Astros need help. I think they need help more with their hitting than anything else. George Springer may not even be staying, and that would be a huge part of their hitting. The Astros, I think, are going to go into rebuild mode within the next 2-3 years.
I think they have. I think they still have plenty of pieces there.
But after what happened with the scandal, I think that they're going to be in rebuild mode soon because everybody's going to start leaving. I don't think the Astros are going to win again with the team that they've got, because especially in the West, it is the hardest, especially in the American League now that you've got the Yankees being stacked.
Yeah,
there's no way. If they want to compete, they're going to need to change that team.
That's fine. We can agree to disagree on that one. I think Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, Yordan Alvarez.
Correa did not do well.
Well, it's a 60-game season. I mean,
doesn't matter if you're not going to do well. You're in a slump the entire time.
Well, but I mean, a 60-game season is not. I don't think you blow things.
He was also out with. I believe he was also out with
well,
injury.
That's fine. We can agree to disagree, but let me just get my point out real quick.
To be fair, I hate the Astros.
Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, still in their 20s, still very controllable. And despite a 60-game season, let's not forget that this team was 9 innings away from going to the World Series. It wouldn't have been warranted. It wouldn't have been deserved. But guess what? It was 2020.
They shouldn't have even made it in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. But they did, and they made it to Game 7 of the American League Championship Series. And really, all they're losing is, George Springer, and he hasn't, technically been lost yet. I think if they can add some pitching like they do now with Baez, I think if they can find a starter or two, I think they become somebody who can actually push the A's, because right now I don't know if anybody in that division is able to do that, but we shall see there. But that was all the signings we had. Yeah, what's up?
They made it because the team we both hate ended up beating the Angels in the final weekend, and I am never going to let that go, because the Angels would have made it and the Astros would not have made it in if the Dodgers had lost to the Angels at least one game.
Well, yeah, that was the Angels needing to pull something out there, and it didn't happen. But
that's because they had the Dodgers at the end.
Yeah, but like I said, all you got to do, get yourself a ticket to the dance, and anything can happen. And it almost did for the Astros. So that was just, my thought process on the Astros.
I would have loved to have seen a rematch, like a full-on rematch.
For both of us, because we both hate the Dodgers and the Astros. I think it might have had to cheer for the Dodgers, but it
would have been enjoyable for us because of what happened in 2017.
Oh, 100% drama.
It would have been enjoyable for us. I'm sure there would have been fights.
Oh, big time. I think so too. But finishing up here, as we've done the last few weeks, a player profile from the Negro leagues that have played since, it was about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, that Major League Baseball made the long deserved move to change up and recognize the Negro leagues as a major league. And we've been spotlighting certain players. And in this situation, this isn't a player, but this is actually, a player who played in early baseball, in deintegrated baseball, if you will. But Rube Foster, he was actually the founder of the first Negro National League. He also founded the Chicago American Giants. He was born in Calvert, Texas in 1879. He did pass away at the age of 51 in 1930. This is a guy who, in the early parts, the 1910s, 1920s, historians believed that he was the best pitcher, that in that time, before the Satchel Pages came around, and some of the more well-known African-American pitchers who weren't able to show their craft in the majors until obviously later on. But he was considered the best, and he was the founder. He is considered the founding father of Black baseball in America. And while the Negro National League wasn't the exact Negro League that was recognized by Major League Baseball, this was the first come together and really set the groundwork for what was or what would become recognized as a major league.
I mean, he played 12 years in the league, not only as a player, but he was coaching at the same time.
Yes, pretty much everywhere he went, he was. And And like we said, the Chicago American Giants were one of the best teams at the time. He founded them too. So there's a lot of other things that go into that as well. And you can't exactly just, pop onto LinkedIn back in the 1920s and try and find an intern here and there. So he was somebody, like we said, the father of Black baseball, never played in the any real what was considered Negro leagues, but did lay the groundwork for what would become a major league or a Negro league that was recognized as a major league. He did, unfortunately, in 1926, began to just have some paranoid thoughts. I think if, it was around this time, he would be diagnosed in some way. But, back then it was just, call him crazy and let him go. But he was paranoid towards the end of his career, obviously, passed away at the age of 51. And really, when he went, that the Negro National League that he had founded, it also kind of went down as well. He was kind of the glue that held that league together. But like I said, at the end of the day, this wasn't the exact Negro League that was recognized, but Rube Foster was the one who put it all together. And eventually, and of course, 1981, 51 years. So he died at the age of 51. And then 51 years after his death, he was finally enshrined in Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. Very, very, and he was the first pioneer or executive. So he was the first non-player from the Negro Leagues to make it into the Hall of Fame. That is, of course, Rube Foster, Andrew Rube Foster, just to make everything capiche. But someone that was the I don't want to say puppet master, because that has such a negative connotation, but just, someone who kind of laid the groundwork for what we saw later on in the 30s, 40s, and eventually all the way up to the Jackie Robinson integration.
I mean, he did a lot in those short 51 years. Obviously, he should have lived longer, but circumstances led him to not. But I mean, I think it's just a feat in and of itself that you can be a player and a coach at the same time. Like, how are you coaching while on the mound? And if you're up to bat, how are you coaching other people to run?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but it's one of those. I think we've all kind of ran into people like that in their profession, in their field, that you just kind of take a step back and go, what? Like, how does that person do it? Whatever they're doing. And you just kind of, just have to appreciate it. And I believe that's exactly what Rube Foster was. But final thoughts there, Bryanna, for another episode here of the Change Up as we get 1 week closer to spring training.
I mean, LeMahieu is the first of obviously the top 5 free agents to sign. Where are the rest of you going? Bauer especially. Where are you going? This is driving me nuts.
It's funny. I really feel like that is Trevor Bauer going, yes, I've done my job. The suspension.
Okay. The fact that he's putting out YouTube videos about what he wants in a team. He's putting out videos about the players that are going to other teams and like, hey, these people, these fans, this is what you're getting. I'm like, pick a team. Like, I love your Twitter and I love your YouTube. Pick a team.
He will be the last domino to fall. I really do believe that. He wants the stage all to himself.
Angels are waiting.
My eye is on JT Realmuto. Where does he end up? What does he bring to a team? And how much does he cost? I think we've seen in this offseason not as much money as we've seen thrown around, obviously, in years past. I go back to, once again, the DJ LeMahieu, a guy who was a top 5 MVP the last couple of years and, doesn't get a 3-figure or I guess that would be a 9-figure salary, but he's not missing any meals either at 6 years, 90 million. So thank you all so much for listening. Bryanna, thank you for your time today. As always, it is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. Have a wonderful day.